This is FanSpeak InDepth, where we discuss important news to the comics community with focused conversation. Today we talk about Mike Deodato Jr. I am Chester C. Busby III with DeWolf and Denali. Let's get right into it with an article from Bounding into Comics by John F. Trent. Marvel artist Mike Deodato Jr. questions why Comicsgate members aren't in prison. Let's read.
Marvel Comics artist Mike Deodato Jr., who is currently doing art on Marvel's big event series Infinity Wars, doubles down on his recent comics targeting Comicsgate members. He previously declared he would not work with any member of Comicsgate, but he would also not be attending any conventions where Comicsgate members had been invited. What do you guys think about that?
Seems to me like he's drawing a line in the sand in which he's actually putting himself behind a wall, and he's going to find himself in dire need of some good work and some good money in the soon to be future.
I would agree.
I think I definitely think it's absurd that he would just say that that we should go to prison. This is just a harassment. He's also telling any conventions that he's going to boycott them as well. Just because people have an opinion that's different from his own.
Well, I'm kind of wondering, is he really that important?
No, he's not, especially in the regards of who does and does not go to jail. I'm glad there's no authority yet set down by great socialist masters that say what art form can and cannot be seen today. I remember way back when there was a man named Larry Flint, and he fought for the ability to put out, his type of smut. Well, nowadays it's good art and it's good stories that are being put out by good people who want to just be bought, and good people want to buy it. And that's the biggest crime that's being committed is, people wanting to buy a good comic book.
And what's interesting about that comment that you were showing in the article with Bounding into Comics is the people who supported that tweet, which was Gail Simone, which was John Layman, and several other creators that's been very outspoken against towards Comicsgate and those who identify as Comicsgate fans, saying that they would also boycott conventions as well. So they do put a pressure. Him alone, might not have so much influence, but him with some other creators may put the pressures on him because a big draw of those conventions is getting kind of guests like him as well. So it's a form of intimidation and bullying.
It is most certainly. It is not a form of. It is direct bullying. And this also brings up the topic we have talked about before in regards to several of these people in this so-called Comicsgate community, which, we should have a conversation about that name in general, because that is something that our enemies have labeled us with, I believe. And I say enemy as in literally enemy, because they are calling us all horrible things all the time simply because we're buying indie books from people they don't like. Nevertheless, we do have people like the Bright Wisers and Chuck Dixon and Ben Hennessy and others, and of course we saw with Mike Miller, who was basically forced out of a convention, the Grand Rapids Comic-Con. This seems to me that the cons are ground zero. What do you think about that?
They are. You're right. The comic cons have become ground zero. Why they want to keep them out of the cons, which is funny because these particular creators are creating or are getting all their money from Indiegogo campaigns. They just don't want them to be at the cons. They don't want more publicity, and the funny thing about that is they are getting more publicity. The more and more this type of thing comes out, it's more publicity. You're starting to see more and more news agencies even discuss what Comicsgate is, and the more publicity there is and the more these words get used against us, you hear that these terms such as racist and people start rolling their eyes. It becomes the boy who cries wolf, such as like with the Kavanaugh thing at the Supreme Court. Somebody else comes out with information and accusations, and it gets to the point where, oh, it's just another one, and no one takes it serious. And when no one takes it serious, that's a problem.
And here's the funny thing, adding to that a couple weeks ago, the mayor of Long Beach, California, tweeted out saying, denouncing Comicsgate. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm like saying, why is the mayor of Long Beach denouncing Comicsgate? What is he? Does he understand what he's getting into? Why is a politician weighed into this? And that's kind of, and I'm like saying, yeah, it's about to burst. I'll give it like another couple of months before it comes out spilling, because there's a pressure building, and we're reaching that maximum terminus where it's just going to boil over, and it's going to be surprising what the conversation is going to happen about this, because it's really about culture, and really what is this going to be another bipartisan issue when comics should be something that unites us all.
It's true.
Right, and you're right, it is about culture, and the reason why they're having a problem with it is because it is effective.
Yeah, it's a really sad thing that's going on, but it is what it is, and we have to open our eyes to it. And when you mentioned the boy who cried wolf, this is not something that's just happening in Comicsgate or in the comics book community here. It's also happening everywhere. I mean, I don't want to get into outside politics beyond the comic industry, but the whole Me Too movement is pretty much a boy who cried wolf, and it's not good, because there are some ladies inside of that who need to be heard, truly need to be heard. But no one's paying attention anymore, because everyone and their sister is coming out with a Me Too. And this is the problem with lying. This is the problem. Well, let's move on to the next section. Let's continue reading here. In a new interview with Shoot the Breeze Comics. Have you guys heard of this website? I've never heard of it before.
No,
haven't heard it. So news to me, so yeah.
Well, yeah, it's okay. Deodato declares that Comicsgate is an alt-right group. Are you guys feeling rather alt-right today? I'm
Nope.
not. Yeah. He also states
Not at all.
he also states the Comicsgate movement has ruined lives, traumatized innocent people. He doesn't stop there. He labels Comicsgate members as a horde of bigots, misogynists, transphobic, racist, and homophobes whose purpose is to harass comic book creators that oppose their view. I don't know. I don't think I'm any of those things. How about you guys?
No, Chester. They mistyped it. He says he labels anti-Comicsgate members.
Oh, okay.
They forgot the anti part.
Well, that makes a lot more sense. He would go on to question, why isn't the police involved? Well, first of all, Mr. Deodato, that would be, why aren't the police involved? But hey, I'm an English teacher, so blame me. There is no...
Actually, the police involved because, Ben Hennessy from Cautionary Comment has alerted the FBI's. So, for law enforcement, because of death threats.
Yeah.
So, and other people's as well are infringing those rights. We are calling the police, we are calling law enforcement, the highest law enforcement, the FBI, to check out why these people are harassing. So, yeah, so
Sure.
Mr. Deodato, you need to, keep up with the news.
And we also had...
yeah, statements like that
go on.
are just absolutely insane. I mean, to that and then on to the next sentence and throughout. It's to be able to come up with this and ask these questions. It's insane.
Yeah, no, it is. It's we also we're talking about the danger that's going on at Comic-Cons, and last week's FanSpeak was talking about that directly. But we didn't even mention Jeremy at the cornering. He literally was assaulted
Right.
by the cop, right?
Yeah, and let me tack on to what I just said, because that's a big word for me to say insane without an actual, doctor saying that this particular man is insane, because what we like on our side is truth. But I don't need truth to say this. I label him and the other anti-comic skaters as insane. I label them as Martians. I label them as warmongers who are attempting to put weevils into our brains, and other kinds of terrible things happening to us. And that's what they want. They want to take weevils, put them into our brains, and have them grow. And I can do that because it's just strictly saying that I'm going to label them as that. And what does that mean? It means nothing. Go away, sir.
Yeah, well, that's the standard tactic these days. They simply label you something and move on, and that's not how conversation takes place. But Mr. Deodato continues here, and he says, there is not a law these people are infringing. Why aren't they in prison? They are hurting innocents, making a profit of it, and nothing happens to them? Well, the only thing I see there that is actually true is they are making a profit, which is kind of the intention. Moving on. Deodato then declares, I don't know American laws, but here in Brazil, we have laws against racism that actually works. Well, that, once again, grammar, Mr. Deodato. The leader of the movement should be held accountable for their crimes. So who would be the leaders that he's talking about, guys?
Well, if you look at this trailer, Who's the Leader of Comicsgate, he's telling that all the consumers that purchase the books from the creators should be held accountable for so-called crime, if we are consumer of that product.
Well, that's true, but he's specifically calling out the leaders of the movement. So who are the leaders of the movement? What do you think, Mr. DeWolf?
You're right. I see where you're going here, because there's what we know as the leaders, which is us, who we have stopped buying Marvel and DC, and we've started buying independents on Indiegogo, and so that makes us the leaders. But without having that one person making a comic, the thousands of us can't be giving our millions of dollars to them. So that makes them a leader. And those leaders then are your pro artists and writers who were once Marvel and DC, who are no longer there. That's the leaders. We all know their names. And those are the people that he wants to put in jail, because they've broken the law of hurting innocents. And these innocent people, these people that they've hurt, are basically all of the other pros, artists, and I said pros, artists and writers back at Marvel and DC. They've hurt them because they left. They left with their head held high. They went ahead and made more money by doing so and said, we're not coming back. You don't hurt our feelings. And all of that means that the other people left behind are having their feelings hurt. And that is a terrible crime.
And your blacklist, which all these editors, which has been reported, but there's no written documentation, but it happens because it's a click. It doesn't affect us. We found a new way, a new audience that will support our body of work. So you can't control us. You can't control the consumers. You can't control the creators. You don't control nothing. And that's what's driving them all crazy.
Possible. I would say to the Deodatos of the world that the reason why we're not buying comic books from, the big three is simply because the art quality has dropped drastically. The writing is horrible, and they're, in general, not superhero comics anymore. They're basically Archie. And that's fine if you like Archie, but we're here to buy superhero comics. And that's the main reason people aren't buying it anymore. To think that we are all of these various isms and these other phobias that they say we have and our hateful, evil hearts has nothing to do with anything. But let's continue. He says, but here he says, but what's really interesting about Deodato's interview is that he implies that he doesn't really know a lot about Comicsgate. In his first question response, Deodato says, "First of all, I have to say that I am not the best person to talk to about this. I live in Brazil. My English is not too good." Okay, well, I can forgive you for that. "And I am also not too familiar with the history of social movements in the U.S., neither its politics. My only real good ability is to draw. I don't have the arguing skills either, the intelligence of several other creators that have been battling this movement way before me." Okay, well, at least he's honest. But therefore, my question would be, if you don't know what's going on, why are you commenting in such a vile and hateful and harsh manner? I mean, it's a bit ridiculous.
Because he's view is a virtue signal. His peers are saying, "Look, man, this is what's going on. You need to talk about against." Because a lot of people like your artist, and your follower needs to know, hey, those creators that are, taking the Comicsgate moniker, they're bad. They're trying to take your comic books away. They're trying to say that, these things are not important. So you need to speak out, because if you don't speak out, you won't have a paycheck any longer.
Well, he actually mentioned speaking out here. It says, nevertheless, Deodato notes that despite not being fully aware of what Comicsgate is, he wants to speak out against it. That said, I wouldn't miss the opportunity to speak out against Comicsgate with this interview. So once again, I don't talk about things I don't know. That's simply personal responsibility. Why don't you tell us a little bit about personal responsibility, Mr. DeWolf?
And here we have it wrapped up in this next sentence, as it says that where he is getting his information, and it's coming from Marvel Comics, Image, Dark Horse, DC Comics, and a specific writer named Jeff Lemire. And when it comes to responsibility, here comes a big issue, and that is the fact that we have a good man here, right? He's a good man, he's a good artist, he wants to do the right thing. And he says so because he wants to speak out against Comicsgate. Someone lied to him. Someone told him Comicsgate was bad. And the big heart of that this man has, the big heart that anyone would have, when they hear about an injustice in the world, they want to help correct it. And to the extremes of what he's been told, this vast racism, so he says, well, then those people need to be in jail. I don't understand why they wouldn't be. And that's one of the biggest problems you have now with the social justice warrior type of movement, is that they get other people involved, and eventually, like what's going to happen here, we and others are saying that what he's saying is wrong, and now he turns into a bad guy, and he's not a bad guy, but the social justice warriors, those people are roping him in, and they're tossing him on the flames of the public opinion of the Comicsgaters. And as people that have been dubbed Comicsgaters, we have to go ahead and take the responsibility to look at these things, reach out to people like this, and say, we understand, we know where you're coming from, and you've been misinformed, and then point the finger where it needs to go to. Isn't that correct, Jeff?
We need somebody who speaks Portugal to tweet him out, Portuguese, who to tweet him out and explain what Comicsgate is in his native language, so he can understand reasonably what we are about. Because the only people who's been crying wolf has been Jeff Lemire's and those groups of people that surrounds Jeff Lemire's about it. Not to say that there isn't some harassment going on, because it's the internet and that does happen, but to the extent where they're generalizing everything to whole populations of it, that's kind of untrue and unsettling. So yeah, it's about a lot of communication. It's about being forgiving others, and it's about communicating. Be the better person, explain what's going on, if English isn't their first language, find their first language and talk to them about it. If they can't, if they um, don't listen, they can, read between the lines of what you're saying through it. If you meet them in a convention, talk to them. Don't self-identify as a Comicsgate, but just talk to them as a regular person, and see what they think about it. I almost had like the feeling and say, hey, people who are going to see, who self-identify as comic skater, say, hey, maybe next time you see Scott Schneider or or other, creators, be it, have them sign and say, hey, get together and say, hey, we are the leader of Comicsgate. And, that's very unfortunate that you think of us because, we are diverse, we are calm, and, all we want is good comic book and good criticism to try to fix this industry. And just be polite about it. Don't let it, don't let your better self lose to the anger, to the rage, to the emotion that hits you. Take a 5-minute break after you read something, come back with a clear and cool head. Because the only thing you're going to do when you speak out in anger and emotions is you're going to be hurting not just yourself, but the other person, because your message, what you want, will never get through, and you're just closing each other up into between walls.
That's interesting that both of you are forgiving his personal agency and basically placing him as the duped buffoon. That's interesting. But
I think we should just stick with the fact that we are forgiving.
Okay.
Yes.
Because that's what we are.
All right.
Everybody will make mistake. Everybody will have miscommunication. Everybody will do some actions that, people are look at you and say, why did he do that? And why did he, or that person did that, or why she did that. And you have to talk to them about, what's going on. You have to empathize with them as well.
I get what you're saying. This is not a young man.
Mm-hmm.
We saw his picture in the beginning. He's my age or older. And you do not live those many years and then come out with statements like this unless you believe them. Because he is literally advocating people being put in prison for simply having an opinion, for simply not supporting and buying their comic books is what it really comes down to. So I'm not willing to forgive his agency. I can forgive his lack of knowledge, but I cannot forgive his knowingly coming out and making statements that he should know better than to do. So I guess I have some forgiveness, but I don't have a complete forgiveness because this is outrageous what is going on here. And listen to what he says here. I have heard the name a couple of times, I'm assuming he wants to say the last year, but never paid much attention until my friend Jeff Lemire tweeted about it. I have been working with him on a creator-owned project, I would assume, for over a year. And during this time, I learned to respect him as a brother. And so when I read his words about it, I knew the thing was serious and that I had to help some way. So I guess what he's basically saying is my friend said it, so it must be true. So maybe there's some truth to what you guys are saying. But he does go on here, continue, and he says, I started retweeting stuff, but it was when one of their minions tweeted me insulting Magdalene Visaggio that I started getting more involved. I was so impressed with the intelligence and courage that her and others like Gail Simone, Ren Famous, just to mention a few, were dealing with in a daily basis with the attacks, that I felt that the least I could do was to lend my voice to spread the word. Well, I don't have any particular problem with Magdalene Visaggio, but I don't think I would put the words intelligent and impressed. I mean, she really doesn't write very well. She might be courageous. That's possible. And we know well about Miss Gail Simone. I have no idea who this Renfamous is, and I probably don't want to.
So I may interject. Just to scroll up a little bit towards the tweet beforehand. Notice that he says that he got to know Jeff Lemire during a creator-owned project over a year. So that means that he's been listening to Jeff Lemire talk about this during a creator-owned project. So, and the only thing that was affecting Jeff Lemire was these criticisms about his body of work that has been occurring over the past year. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Jeff Lemire doesn't like the Comicsgate's criticism of his body work, and now has translated it over to
that's kind of
to
the
the
problem,
thing.
right?
Yeah. So it's really not about this. That sentence speaks more about, this is hurting our jobs because the criticism are going to affect the sales and my bottom line. And with that, there goes my money. So it's very serious. That's the underlying thing I'm seeing. Yes, it's a lot of things going on, a lot of defamation going on both ends, because there are those hotheads that, instead of thinking about what they're going to say, just says it out.
Yeah, but
that gives credence to these things.
see, the problem, Denali, is they're getting upset because we don't like, we're critiquing the work. It has nothing to do with who's doing the work. It's the work itself. It's not well written. The art is not good. It is not superhero, which we want to buy. That's the critique that's coming out. It's not, I don't like you because. That's not what's going on, but they're getting upset because of the critique, which I don't blame them. I can understand that. But yet they're coming back at us. Yeah, no, I'm just saying they're coming back at us and saying we're labeling us with all these alt-right bigotry, misogynist, transphobic, racist, homophobes, or whatever, and all the basket of deplorables, as Hillary Clinton wants to say, simply because we don't like something.
But what I was clarifying, and I'm sorry because my mind doesn't stay on one track, was it's not so much as the creators as well. It's how it's expressed, those criticism, and how the reaction to the criticism, which you are saying right, but also the after effects, which is other people chiming in and adding their 2 cents to the words, and those exchange. Like Renfamous, she came out. I remember how that started, which was Mike Miller at San Diego Comic-Con, where she came in the light because of a comment that Mike said about his belief, and she started trolling about it.
So she's the one that asked what he thought about homosexuals, and he says, I'm a Christian, I believe the Bible. And she took that and ran with that and hammered him. Oh, I see. That's the person.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. And they're using that as much as they're saying, and that's what I'm trying to get, as much as they're saying that their side are projecting what they are doing themselves, which is, they're profiting off of hate. But you guys are doing that as well. Or not even as well. You are doing that. And we're here trying to build another industry, which we didn't know at that time. And you are projecting everything that you are doing and what you think of us onto us.
True. Well, DeWolf, why don't you get in here and give us your opinion on this, and then I'll read the Bounding in the Comments wrap up here at the end.
Yeah, certainly. Bigotry is exactly what you guys were talking about, because bigotry is intolerance towards anyone who holds a different opinion, and that's plain and simple. To call someone out to make sure that you get their religion and that they believe out into a public forum so that you can then ridicule that's bigotry. And every one of these people have an intolerance towards those people that they dubbed Comicsgate. It was supposed to be a hateful term, and there is no thing that the other side has done. The Comicsgate, they have used the term SJW because social justice warrior is a term that they came up with, because it's supposed to be something in which they are, striving and working toward a better society for people. And the problem is they've taken it with their bigotry and they've turned it into a hate movement. And it doesn't matter what you do. I don't care about labels. You can throw a racist label at us. Well, it just doesn't stick. You can throw the bigotry label at them, the hatred label at them, and then just watch them. So you watch both sides and you see what happens. And the casual observer, the normal person, which I realize, it's almost what's on trial here is being normal. The normal person is going to watch this and they're going to see where the where the bigots really are.
And what's funny about that is how much that word upsets the social justice warrior, the word normal and normal people. That basically you're assuming if you're normal, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're whatever, transphobic, whatever, because of the connotation of normal. When normal means people who just wants to live their life, without any issues, kind of drama-free, because life already gives them plenty of dramas. And they just want to live their lives, with their loved one, with their kids, with whatever, and enjoy it. And this is where it gets ridiculous. It gets ridiculous not just on the left side, but on the right side. And
yes, that is true.
It's taking this situation, and it is like, and I see it, not just in comics, I see it in sports, I see it in all vast of entertainment and culture. The same thing playing out, where it's like, there's going to be differences, there's going to be different ideas, but you have to respect those ideas.
Yeah,
and if you can't respect them, there's not going to be any discussions, there's not going to be any empathy or empathizing with each other, and you're only going to breed the hate that each side, or whoever is saying, who's projecting onto the other, is saying that the other side will do. So you have to not be that. You have to be the better person, and the better person is always the harder choice. It's like, if I want to put it in terms of comic book, it's like Batman, his only one rule is he won't kill anybody. He'll get close, but he won't do it because of his code. And, it's like we look up to these superheroes. Superman, he will save everybody, despite themselves. Even, if they don't deserve to be saved, because that's what a hero does.
True.
And we root for them because they do the tough choice. They teach us the lessons, the principles of, what it is to be the ideal human being.
Yes.
Things that we should be aspiring for.
That is true, and that's why Superman, of all the comic book heroes from around the world, is actually a character that is beyond comics. Superman is an icon because he is the ideal. He is what America and Americans want to be. But let me go ahead and finish with the ending comment here from Bounding into Comics. This seems to be a major problem with the comic book industry at large. No one is doing their own investigation into what Comicsgate is about, and instead takes the word of their fellow professionals as trusting. They then decide to label a large swath of the comic book buying community and their peers in the industry with disgusting, defaming terms like alt-right, bigots, misogynists, transphobics, racists, and homophobes, without any evidence to support their claims. In fact, a number of the folks Deodato notes as people who are victims aren't as innocent as he pretends. As I covered multiple times, Magdalene Visaggio has threatened physical violence against all cis people. Cis refers to anyone whose gender identity matches their anatomical gender birth. We will not even get into the conversation of this silly word that has come up. Matter of fact, I was thinking about doing a show called Nonsense and just talking about all the nonsense that we see every day. Nevertheless, he continues on. This article goes on and on, but I think we've pretty much covered it. I'll just read this last paragraph here. Mike Deodato Jr.'s rhetoric is extremely dangerous. He is not only calling Comicsgate members all sorts of nasty names, but he's actively questioning why Comicsgate members aren't in prison. He believes they've committed some kind of criminal action by wanting higher quality comics. Creators to treat fans who they disagree with respect and a diverse array of thought in their comics. Not just ham-fisted comics that read more like propaganda than an interesting page-turner. Well said. Well,
Here's one thing I want to add about that, and why I think creators treat fans like that as well. It's because they think we're, as fans, as consumers of comic, we're junkies. We're the people who, has to get that hit. In this case, comic has had that addiction, and that we'll get comics from whoever provides that.
True.
And we have to kind of wake up from that and say, we are not junkies, we are not addicts. We're going to go beyond this, and if you're giving us terrible stuff, then as capitalism works, because I believe in capitalism in this country, we're going to go away and build our own industry and get our comic books by hiring the creators, hiring the writers, hiring the artists, and making the comic books ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we are not going to wait for the pros to do that as well.
Well, that's what the Comicsgate community actually is. It's a bunch of people supporting an indie renaissance that is going on for comic books that we're interested in. And it's, also kind of become a community.
And I think that's important. I think it's important to as our part in it. FanSpeak itself came about because we said we want to see more movement. We want to project more growth. We want to show that this is a bigger thing, and we want more voices. And FanSpeak brings in even more of the fans so that they have more of a voice to show exactly how big this movement is, that it's growing, and that I'm sorry, guys, we're in control.